Okay, so we're back today with Jo Rogers, who is a 7-time Miss Australia, a NABA Miss World runner-up, and Jo actually competed in 17 shows over a time frame of 10 years.
Yeah.
And I thought one of the things that we're all still really interested in is how others individually do their prep and particularly their nutrition. And I just thought we'd chat with Jo. Recently, Jo's had a little bit of a lifestyle change, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So when you did compete, Jo, what kinds of foods and I seem to remember you said to me that you usually started prepping just after New Year's Day. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it was regardless of the date of the show, which was if I was doing NABRA, it was generally sort of towards the end of May, 1 or 2. It's been the beginning of June. I would basically start prepping the Monday after the New Year. So whatever date that was, would be that first week of the brand new year, and I would prep for anywhere between 20 and 24 weeks.
Okay, and for you, like what basically, how did you eat? Not just what, but how, like meal frequency, I suppose. And
I'd split my breakfast up into 2, I suppose, so it just got a little bit more over a small period of time. So very, very basic, and so it was meat, vegetables, carbs. Back then was more rice, a little bit of potato. I was eating pasta, whatever, rice cakes, that sort of thing. So it wasn't anything it was structured but not concrete, if that makes sense. I didn't just have fish on that meal each day. We spoke about it earlier, more intuitive towards the end of my career, bodybuilding career.
Okay, so what do you mean by intuitive?
I suppose it's very similar to what the girls and the guys are all doing these days with the macros. If I felt like having chicken, I would have chicken. If I wanted to have eggs, I'd have eggs. As long as it sort of fitted that meal plan.
Okay, and sources of fats, like what was your consideration with fats back then? Did you have them?
I didn't add a lot of fats. I mean, I would be between 85 and 90 kilos off season and competing. At the beginning of my bodybuilding career, when I first started with NABRA, I was in the high 60s. I ended up competing in the mid 70 kilo range. So I was eating a huge amount of meat. Back then, 1.5 kilos of meat still has a lot of fats in it. So I didn't think I needed to supplement too much. I didn't sort of boil it or anything to get all the fats out. I just ate it as it was, obviously cutting off excess. But I didn't worry too much about adding any extras in. I was having 50 or 60 grams of fat just with the foods that I was eating.
Nowadays there seems to be not much of a middle road with coaches, so-called coaches, trainers, in terms of cardio. They seem to either give the girls a lot of cardio or they're more not too much cardio. How did cardio fit into your contest prep?
It didn't. I did very, very little. At the beginning, I started bodybuilding and sort of, I suppose, teaching sports aerobics, teaching group fitness classes at the same time. So I was doing cardio at the beginning, but it was my job. So to me, it wasn't cardio to prepare for a show. It would be like a labourer who does a lot of labour-intensive lifting as part of his job. He would have to lift over and above in the gym to get results. So for me, I don't like doing cardio, so I did everything else possible to get lean. So I would manipulate my diet rather than spend time on a treadmill or walking the streets.
Yeah. And as far as the weight training, I presume heavy.
Very heavy. I haven't come across too many girls that were able to lift the same sort of weights that I was lifting. I trained with the same guy for 7 years, and when we first started, he was, one of the big guys in the gym came up and said, "Oh, would you like to be my training partner?" I was like, "Oh, okay." After my second year of competing, which was a huge honour, but Sean and I stuck it together for 7 years. We're looking an old married couple.
Go on then. Give us a little bit of a maybe something to strive for. Give us 3 or 4 of your lifts and just to put things in perspective.
I was doing bicep curls with 30 kilo dumbbells. I was doing 45 kilo dumbbell flies and free squatting 4 plates aside.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Something most of the current crop of girls, even like the figure girls, they really, I mean, most women just don't lift anything like that, and quite intense. Your intensity.
Our training sessions, if they were over an hour, it was too long. Yeah, so between that 45-minute, 60-minute sort of time frame, I mean, you need a little bit of a break between sets like that.
Yeah.
Our leg sessions were ginormous, you know, and often we'd superset, so we'd do, you know, squats and leg press, or we'd do hack squats and something else. You know, ridiculous weights, so you need a bit more breathing time, but still, less was more.
Oh, less was more. That is an Ingrid Barclay quote that I have written, particularly in Ironman, so many times, and I'm a real fan of that. Less is more. Great to hear that you actually, agree. That's fantastic. And just briefly, you have had a lifestyle change with your food, and I presume I know it's for humanitarian reasons, perhaps spiritual as well.
A little bit, but it's more ethical.
So more ethical. So now you've got.
So these it's been, I think, 7 years. My partner and I both went vegan. So it's an entire lifestyle change. It was an obvious lifestyle change for us. It was just the way we were gearing towards things. Alison had actually stopped eating meat quite a long time before, red meat at least, a long time beforehand. We both went vegetarian for a very short amount of time. And if anyone understands veganism, it's very much. I mean, it can be a health-related thing, but we took it on as a lifestyle thing. So going vegetarian, we felt a little bit hypocritical. You know, we'd taken out the meat products, like the actual flesh, but you're still having all the byproducts that from the animals are kept in unsavory situations. So you're having eggs or you're having milk, and they're the animals that need not to be treated as they are.
Well, here's a curveball for you.
Yep.
Vegetarian bodybuilder, is that an oxymoron to you? Okay, I'll put it to you another way. If you were ever to go back on stage, would you do it?
Stay vegan.
You'd stay vegan?
And I'd probably try it as a raw vegan.
And try it as a raw vegan. And why would that be?
I think a lot of your nutrients are destroyed with the cooking process. Not all of them, but a lot of them. You don't have to eat as much food to get the nutrition if it's raw, and the enzymes are still generally intact.
And I think there's a lot of people out there that would totally agree with you.
The raw food, there's a lot more people following a raw food diet these days, and if they're not 100% raw, then they're at least getting a percentage of their greens or plant-based foods in a raw process.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of a tautology.
At the moment, I guess, I think early on in the new year, Jai mentioned to me that the most Googled diet was the paleo diet. So we talk a lot in terms of what diet do you follow, high protein, low protein. No one would do that, low fat, high fat. No carb, low carb, high carb. We've got paleo, we've got if it fits in macros, all of those things. Now, I'm a fan of manipulating macros, but it doesn't come under that umbrella. Obviously, we've got to skim calories as we go through the process, but I'm also a really big fan of that intuition thing, reading the biofeedback, and then, okay, this person's not sleeping well, they don't have this much energy, this person's doing great, got so much energy, very tactile, senses are alert, giving feedback, but intuition we can't quantify. Are you happy to not put an acronym to the way that you're eating?
I don't feel like I have that need to slot myself into a box.
Yeah.
So the way I dieted was very intuitive. If I didn't have set free meals, I factored them in when they were needed rather than because I was doing it every Saturday. So, I think they're great for mental health and stability. I think they can help kickstart your diet. But I've seen some people backfire where they have a free day and, you know, they're stuck in Sizzler from breakfast to the end of the dinner shift and wonder why they're not getting results. So obviously you've got to be sensible with what you do during your free meal, free day or whatever. But I did that when I needed it. It might have been 2 weeks apart, it might have been 5 days apart. It would be a wake up in the morning going, no, it's got to happen either today or tomorrow. Set it, and then you'd be able to cope for that little bit of time. But I didn't do it just because it was a Saturday night.
And that's interesting, because I will actually factor in a free meal if the client's feedback is telling me that's what needs to be done. I'm a fan of no free meals, no cheap meals, but there are times, places and people where it's imperative.
But if you're not getting results for some reason or another, and you just need that bit of a kickstart.
Well, there's definitely evidence to say that mentally and behaviourally, God forbid, it is a release and can be most useful in progression. But it's good to hear.
You've also got to pick the goal too and make sure that it doesn't become a snowball effect.
That's right.
You've got to have that right mentality to be able to go, I'm allowed to have this today, but I'm back on track tonight.
Yes, and that's the juggling act,
and knowing
isn't it?
your clients,
Yeah.
and their personalities and traits.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's it for today. Thanks a lot
You're
for sharing
welcome.
that. Thanks,
See you
guys.
guys.